In positives, Nebraska does very well being a right-to-work state. That is an incredibly important variable, and we talked to many businesses around the country that say they will not invest in a state unless it's a right-to-work state. So that's a very big positive that Nebraska has going for it. The other big one that stands out is Nebraska's ranking in its tort climate in terms of judicial impartiality and other tort treatments. It ranks 4th best in the country. So those two really stand out as being the 2 best in our 15 factors. And on the other side, you have some things like the inheritance tax still exists and is a problem for family farms and some family businesses because of the locals collecting the tax at the time of death. Also, you have a situation where you don't have limits on the growth of spending or growth of tax revenue. Some states have moved in that direction. We use that as a factor as well when we take a look at how to rank states for their economic climate. So I would say if I highlight 2 on each side, those would be the 4 that I would say really stands out to make Nebraska middle of the pack, 31st out of 50. Well, I would say if you were to take one thing that would be somewhat of a low-hanging fruit, that would be repeal the inheritance tax, make sure that family businesses, farms and ranches and small businesses do not have the threat of having to liquidate at the time of death of let's say their founding member of the business. They can pass it on to their kids or their grandkids, and it makes so much more certainty for business development. I think that would be the one that I would say most important for Nebraska's health. Tax policy, I think it's very important to tax consumption more than capital, especially in today's really mobile workforce where capital is moving across state lines more than ever. It's moving international lines more than ever. And so taxing consumption, let's say maybe have a retail sales tax and focus on getting most of your state revenue through that instead of relying so heavily on the personal income tax. Nebraska is one of the states that has the most progressive personal income tax structure, which makes it unstable as a source of revenue and also penalizes people, of course, as they move up the income scale. So getting rid of that altogether, moving to more of a consumption tax base, I think would be the right move if you're to start from scratch. Well, it's a big, the problem of unfunded liabilities is a big drag on predictability because that's all hanging over the heads of business owners and taxpayers. We're not sure when the bills are going to come due, but they will come due someday. And so unless you make some big substantive reforms to public pensions, it really has a effect of clouding the economic future for the state. Now, Nebraska is not in the situation of Illinois or California that are some of the worst in public pensions. However, big challenges do remain, and there needs to be some changes to say all new hires, let's say, go into 401k defined contribution plans. It really starts to limit the problem because it's an issue of predictability. And if businesses that are looking to invest in Nebraska think there's an unpredictable future ahead with debt and with pension obligations, they may think twice before investing in the state. Well, I think as you look across the country, you're going to see probably more attempts to raise more tax revenue. I think you're going to see some targeted attempts to raise more tax revenue from the business community, which is always a misguided attempt since, at the end of the day, businesses don't pay taxes, people do, because businesses pass them along to customers, they pass them along to investors, or they pass them along to workers in the term of lower wages. And so I think we're going to see more of that debate of trying to tax businesses more. That's going to be an unfortunate development, but I think we're going to see some more of that across certain states after this election. Hopefully not in Nebraska here, but I think you're going to see some movement on trying to more regulate and tax business, and I hope that the pro-business forces end up being able to win the day on that argument.